Welcome everyone to What We Are Watching, episode 21. Joey back here with you, riding alongside my co-host TJ. How are you, my friend?
Blackjack.
We've reached Blackjack.
I'm sorry. That's just that's all I want to say. I just want to really just yell out Blackjack, man. It's the 21st episode.
Next episode, you're gonna
Um.
be like double deuces.
Oh man, that's was it? See, no, that ain't even. Yeah, it's gonna have to be double deuces. It's gonna have to be double deuces because the episode after that, that's the Michael Jordan episode.
Indeed.
Indeed. How
All
we
right.
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh man, I'm good. Ready to talk about the mafia.
All right. We are in the middle of season 6. And I was telling you before we hit record that we're headed towards some things, but
Mhm.
these are very dense episodes. Like a lot happens in a short amount of time. So we're going to chop it up here. We start out with stage 5. Is the second episode of part 2 and the 14th episode of season 6. It is the 79th overall episode of the series, written by Terrence Winter and directed by Alan Taylor. It originally aired on April the 15th, 2007. Christopher and Little Carmine are finishing up post-production editing of their mafia-oriented slasher film Cleaver. At a Soprano family dinner, Finn is mentioned during a discussion about their plans to attend the upcoming Cleaver premiere. Meadow says, "I don't intend to discuss Finn," making it clear that between seasons 6A and 6B, they ended the relationship, but no further details are given. Tension between AJ and his girlfriend Blanca is also evident during the meal. Now, TJ, you're a
Yeah,
man of the world.
yeah,
You've been involved in relationships, and you
yeah.
know that whenever you're involved with something, for better or worse, when you're involved with someone, you're also involved with their family. And
Absolutely, you are.
and I'm thinking about Finn. I think Finn cares for Meadow deeply. I think Finn absolutely loves Meadow. But there's a part of him that thanks the good Lord that he is no longer associated with that family, because my friend did not even want to go and get himself a sandwich, even though he could pick anything he wanted out there.
What I recognize is, my guy, I feel like, because you're 1,000% right. When you date someone, you date their family, especially if they're very close with their family.
Right.
You know, you're all in it. And I feel like Finn, whenever he left to his parents, Annette Benning, and the cop who got shot in the first season, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but we're going to say Kevin McAllister's father. Um, when he got out, I bet you he lived the rest of his life like he was in witness protection. I bet you he doesn't even talk about the fact that he had a relationship with Meadow or that he knows anybody from the Soprano family. Like, I'm pretty sure he just lives a benign life as a dentist.
He moved to the city so he would never even have to pass a Meadow again.
That's it. He would eventually grow into Michael Perry's character in the hit movie The Whole Nine Yards, where he stars opposite Bruce Willis, a contract killer in Canada.
It's very specific.
You're welcome.
Tony is later approached by FBI agents Harris and Goddard, who asked him for information he may come across in his line of work concerning terrorism. Following the film's premiere in New York City, Tony congratulates Chris and mingles with the Lubertazis and the cast at the after party. Phil tells Tony he wishes to retire and step down as acting boss of the Lubertazis following his heart attack. During the screening, Rosalie April was shown uncomfortably noticing similarities between the film's love triangle and the rumored triangle between Chris, Tony, and Adriana. She brings this to Carmela's attention, who later points it out to Tony, calling the violent murder of the boss by the film's lead a revenge fantasy against him. Carmela later confronts Chris with this, saying she is disappointed in him. Chris denies any similarities to her, but is privately worried about what Tony's conclusions about the character's origin might be.
It's always somebody trying to kick up some dust Or let me break it down. It's always somebody that doesn't know how to cook. That when you stir and you scrape the bottom of the bowl, that's what the burnt stuff is. All right, let's keep it. First, Rosalie, just enjoy the movie. And then Carmela, like Carmela didn't even, you could have asked. There are so many ways to go about it, right? You can say, let's talk about the character. No, you immediately pass judgment. I think it's out of line. There's always somebody kicking up something, but no, I saw it too. I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, yo, this is obviously Christopher and Tony. And I mean, the bathrobe, the basement scene, all this is just way too familiar.
Absolutely. Chris asked his screenwriter, J.T. Dolan, to tell Tony that the character was his idea. When J.T. refuses, Chris hits him over the head with a Humanitas Prize trophy. J.T. then visits the Bada Bing and explains to Tony that he stole the character and plot from the film Born Yesterday. Tony watches the film at home. Later, he painfully confesses to Dr. Melfi that he believes Chris despises him and that Cleaver illustrates his hatred. He recalls being a father figure to Chris and emotionally admits that he loved him as if he were his own son. Melfi tries to ask Tony to cautiously evaluate if he is not reading into things, but he replies that his sessions with her have taught him enough about the human subconscious to know what the real truth is. Tony Soprano, amateur psychologist.
I mean, this is what they talk about early on, whether or not a psychopath can go through therapy if it's actually beneficial for them or if they're just sharpening their skills. And this is the first opportunity for us to see Tony is fully comprehensive of what's going on. He knows his mind. He knows he's learned a lot, right? From Dr. Milford. We saw it early on where Dr. Milford would say something in therapy that he would then incorporate. He did it with his mom. It's not a nursing home. It's a retirement community. Like this. So for her to come back to him, for him to come back to her the way that he did shows 1,000% he's paying attention and he's sharpening those skills.
Johnny Sack is transferred to a prison hospital in Missouri after being diagnosed with small cell lung cancer. Despite Johnny's allocution in court, his brother-in-law Anthony Infante assures him that he is still well respected on the street. Johnny dies with his wife and 2 daughters at his bedside. In New York, Phil retires and forgoes leadership of the Lupertazis in favor of his protege, Jerry Torchiano. However, Jerry is killed by a hitman hired by Doc Santoro, who looks to usurp the boss's title while having dinner with Silvio in an Italian restaurant. Tony, furious that Silvio was put in danger, arranges a meeting to urge little Carmine to vie again for control of the Lupertazis, saying he would much prefer him as the boss. Little Carmine refuses, saying his wife has convinced him the riches that would come with the title are not worth living their lives with the constant threat of death. Tony seems to consider his words and ponders solemnly.
When little Carmine is talking about his wife, he's talking about Honey Shaw. She's in an episode, well, actually in 2 seasons of a show called Quick Draw on Hulu. And also married to Clay Morrow from Sons of Anarchy. I'm giving you all the degrees of Kevin Bacon right now, folks. And I do that because I'm getting ready to get into some somber stuff. We didn't talk a whole lot about Johnny Sack, after the allocution or whatever. But I mean, he did have a little run in dealing with that doctor who was perceived to be a murderer, and he's getting his hopes up about his cancer and thinking that it's a misdiagnosis and that he has more time. And then obviously he doesn't. And, when you look at that situation, to me, I'm looking at, a person who ultimately did everything he could for his family. His appetite got big, as the opportunity, increased. But it's sad to see him go, especially with that. I mean, Allegra, and then the other girl who would eventually grow up to be the mother from How I Met Your Mother. Like all those, it's just you feel bad for him.
And I'll just say it now. I was going to save it for the end of the episode recap, but the title reference is when Johnny Sack is informed that he had stage 4 lung cancer. He half rhetorically asks, and there's no stage 5. To which the doctor replies, that's correct.
See that, and that's heavy. I mean, but when you hear that, like, okay, this is the end of the road for me, man. Like, it can't get any worse than the way I'm feeling right now. So it's coming to an end. But yeah, R.I.P. Johnny Sack.
But much different than the man who's like, oh, I'm looking to retire to New Jersey. When he was first introduced, a man who does not take kindly to jokes about his wife. A man that says, hey, you might take me down, but I'm going to make you work for it. And because he made them work for it, they embarrassed him at his daughter's wedding. That is my theory.
The fucking chicory.
On what would have been his late brother Billy's 47th birthday, Phil invites family and friends to honor his memory. Phil begins to get progressively more aggressive as the ceremony goes on. After the initial ceremony, Phil talks to Butch and expresses bitterness over having never avenged his brother's murder by killing Tony Blundetto himself. Phil says he compromised far too much in his life. He claims the 20 years he served in prison without giving any incriminating information about the members of his crime family seems to have been for nothing, since it allowed crooked individuals like Doc Santora to take power. Phil claims he feels like his family has endured enough shame since their arrival in the United States. He menacingly states that he will no longer compromise in his life. Phil raises a glass of whiskey while silently looking over the framed picture of deceased Lupertazzi members, including Johnny Sack and his brother Billy. Meanwhile, Tony becomes the godfather to Chris's daughter at her baptism. The tension between Tony and Chris remains unspoken as they embrace firmly.
I don't know if I want Phil to be the head of like my own, like not just talking about an organization. I'm just talking about a family. He is aggressive. Yes. Come here, kids. Let me tell you about your family name. Like, he's just really aggressive. They came over the boat. They were Leonardo, but they changed it. Like, he's just got so much angst in him, man. And what did they change it to? Leonardo. Like, he's so hot with it. And he some stuff is coming because look, he's like a volcano. He's building up through this scene, and then you see what's coming.
I'm just thankful one of the little kids didn't say Leonardo like the turtle. He'd have thrown that kid out the window.
He would just
like the turtle.
He would have slapped the shit out that kid. Marie, come get your son. There's got to be a Marie, right? There's got to be a Marie. Goodfellas taught me that.
All right. Remember When, the 3rd episode of Part 2 and the 15th episode of Season 6. It's the 80th overall episode of the series, written by Terrence Winter and directed by Phil Abraham. It originally aired on April 22nd, 2007. On a tip from re-incarcerated capo Larry Boyd Barisi, the FBI begins investigating the 1982 killing of bookie Willie Overall, which was Tony's first murder.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI searches for and eventually finds Willie's body. Tony and Paulie drive to Miami to lie low until the heat blows over. On the way, Tony questions Paulie about how Johnny became aware of Ralphie Cifaretto's joke about his wife, which nearly led to hostilities between the Soprano and Lupertazzi families. Polly denies any knowledge of it. In Miami, Tony and Polly have dinner with Beansy and some women in a restaurant. These women. Beansy's living the life, isn't he?
Beasley sit back. Beasley is set up hard, bro, to go from a pizza shop.
Beansy's like, listen, I have suffered enough.
Right. To getting beat down, yeah, he earned that.
Tony becomes irritated by the incessant reminiscing between Polly and Beansy and angrily leaves the table. However, after having sex with one of the women, Tony learns that Polly's anecdotes left her with the impression that they were best friends. Tony admits Polly used to be his role model when growing up. Tony phones Hesh and asks for money in the form of a bridge loan, to which Hesh agrees. Tony and Polly arrange a meeting with Cuban contacts of Beansy, which results in the parties agreeing to trade stolen goods. Tony tells Beansy that he's concerned Polly may be a liability. Despite commending Pauline's boldness, Tony wonders whether his loyalty has ever been truly put to the test. He learns that thanks to misinformation given by Larry, the FBI blames Overall's murder on the deceased Jackie April Sr. Tony proposes renting a sport fishing boat to celebrate. Polly accepts despite serious misgivings due to the similar circumstances of Pussy's death.
Yeah.
On the boat, Tony more aggressively questions Polly about the joke leak, to which Polly again denies involvement. Tony considers attacking Polly with a bait knife when his back is turned. Ultimately, Tony decides to let Polly live and tosses a beer at him. That night, Polly has a dream in which he encounters Pussy, after which he frantically lifts weights. Upon returning to New Jersey, Polly sends Tony and Carmela a $2,000 espresso machine. When she wonders why, Tony angrily says that they owe their lifestyle to the hard work of people like Polly.
See, this episode, bro, like I have a hard time with it because Paulie is shady, my guy. I mean, let's just be
100%.
real about it. Like Paulie is the first person to want to get mad when somebody's doing dirt. You know, where he's like, it was the other way around. Son of a bitch. Like that guy
Right.
has. I mean, let's look at it for a second, right? Like, so all right, he told Johnny Sack about Jenny's mole that had to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
He beat up the sanitation prince who was supposed to be left alone, per Tony's words,
Right.
and has got him paying him $4,000 a month for his mom's retirement community.
Right.
I mean, that's just two of them right there. Not to mention the Pine Barrens.
Pine Barrens with the Russians.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying, bro. So, like, Paulie is a liability. And then he talks too much. We saw this episode. Like, I can't even do the tick, man. I can't do it. But you know the thing that Paulie does, man.
In New York City, Doc Santoro has dinner with Phil Leotardo after being sworn in as boss following Jerry's murder. While eating, Doc disrespects Phil by literally taking food off his plate. Later on, Santoro and his bodyguard are murdered in a hit arranged by Phil, who becomes the new boss of the Lupertazzi family. Elsewhere, in the Wyckoff Mental Care Center, Junior is visited by his former soldiers Pat Blundetto and Beppy Skirbo and begs them to aid in his escape. He returns to his old mob habits, bribing an orderly named Jamil for special treatment and organizing an illicit poker game for other patients. However, the game is put to an end when Professor Lynch, a patient who Junior regularly teases, informs on him. Junior finds an admiring follower and a younger patient named Carter Chong, who has been institutionalized for his anger issues.
Something about Junior that can always attract somebody that's willing to follow him.
Right.
You know, and we see what happened. Like Carter would have killed for Junior.
Right.
I honestly believe Carter would have killed for Junior. So I think that was because the man had father issues. He had abandonment issues. The way his relationship was with his father, and you see it with his mother. Yeah, heavy stuff.
Right. One day, Junior beats Professor Lynch in the presence of the staff and is given a new regimen of sedatives. Carter devises a plan to distract the orderlies, handing out the pills to Junior so that he can covertly throw them away. Unfortunately, some of the drugs were meant to combat Junior's incontinence, and he soon humiliatingly urinates on himself. Correctly suspected of receiving bribes, Jamil is fired, and Junior is threatened with a transfer to a less pleasant state-run mental facility if he does not take his medications. Junior complies with the treatment, much to the disappointment of Carter. Junior tries to make amends, but refers to the young man as Anthony. Later, Carter throws wads of paper at a woman playing the piano and becomes enraged when Junior disapproves. Carter furiously attacks and beats Junior, only stopping after being restrained by the staff. The episode ends with the catatonic Junior idly petting a cat while engaged in animal-assisted therapy outdoors.
It's not. I mean, so you're talking about a character arc. You know,
Right.
like somebody who was once a role model for Tony, somebody that he looked up to, somebody whose opinion he really admired. So when Junior says he never had the making of a varsity athlete,
Right.
that really cooked Tony. And then for him to be, I mean, like you realize we're talking six seasons ago, well, 5 seasons ago in season one, Junior is the boss.
Right.
Between he and Olivia, they're making plans to kill Tony.
Right.
So yeah, so for him to be in this situation now to where he's relegated to a chair and the medicines kind of got him like a zombie, that's tough.
And also, I thought back to when Carter was throwing the paper and Junior gets upset, to Junior singing and Meadow throwing the bread in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Like Junior probably was not aware of that, but like moments of where people are playing music or part of your heritage is doing it. Junior takes stuff like that very seriously, and seeing someone disrespect that just sends him over the edge.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one. That was a good one, bro. That's cool.
All right. Chasing It. It's the fourth episode of part 2 and the 16th overall episode of season 6. It's the 81st overall episode of the series, written by Matthew Weiner and directed by Tim Van Patten. It originally aired on April the 29th, 2007. Tony hits a particularly unlucky gambling stretch, and his losses begin to impact his financial obligations as boss of the Soprano crime family. Vito's widow, Marie, asks Tony for help regarding her son, Vito Jr., who has become antisocial following his father's murder. Marie also requests $100,000 to move her family to Maine to start over. Tony resists and suggests that Phil, who killed Vito, should get involved. In Brooklyn, a major party is held for Phil to celebrate his ascension to boss. Phil appoints Albie Cianflone as consigliere and Butch DeConcini as underboss. Tony approaches Phil regarding Vito Jr. shortly after the dinner. Phil agrees to talk to Vito's son. Both men each talk to Vito Jr. to try to make him stop his delinquency, but their attempts fail. Neither of them are willing to fund the Spatafor family's move to Maine.
So neither one of them have any experience talking to a kid that looks like this. I mean, with the emo style and the makeup, some of the none of this stuff translates well. So it's not even like I can jokingly say any of the stuff that they said to this child whose father just was murdered by one of them. Like you're sitting there going to the dude that murdered your dad to say, "Talk to my son, talk to his son." So yeah, it's not funny. Vito Jr. is going through some stuff, man. I mean, and rightfully so, bro. Like rightfully so. That was heavy, you know. but neither one of those guys approached it the right way. You just got to feel for the kid in that one.
After Vito Jr. is expelled for defecating in the school shower, Tony changes his mind and says he will pay for the Spatavor's relocation. He angrily adds that he will never forgive Phil for not coming through on the financing for the family's move. However, Tony soon gambles away the $100,000 he had reserved for the Spatafores on a football bet. In a change of plan, he offers Marie to pay her to sign Vito Jr. up to a boot camp program in Idaho instead. He plays down Marie's worries that corporal punishment is permitted in such places, assuring her not to worry about the expenses as he will pay the $18,000 for it. Reluctantly, Marie accepts.
Vito get him in the dark of night.
Vito Jr. is dragged away from his bed and home against his will by the boot camp's representatives in the middle of the night, leaving his mother and sister in tears at the sight.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had to experience anything like that firsthand, man. But you're sitting there. I don't know what else. She couldn't do anything. There's nothing else that she could do. Like, she really was at her wit's end. And you look at her, Phil said it. That's a woman that ain't getting laid. And I'm not trying to make jokes, but I'm just you can see she was burnt out. So the move may have been better because you go to a new area where nobody knows you, kind of reinvent yourself. But something's going to happen.
Absolutely. Hesh begins to regret handing $200,000 to Tony as a bridge loan. Tony only grudgingly pays Hesh his points, often making it a show of the act. Hesh, suffering from hypertension, becomes concerned that Tony will kill him rather than pay and reflects that debts end up destroying friendships. Bobby and Carlo encourage Tony to stiff Hesh, but Tony angrily rebukes the idea. Later, Tony notices Ahmed and Muhammad mingling with traditionally dressed Middle Easterners on a street. Meanwhile, AJ proposes to Blanco, who initially accepts but later ends the relationship during the Puerto Rican Day parade, citing her uncertainty over whether she loves him.
I'm sorry for laughing at AJ, man, because AJ's crappy attitude is why I'm kind of just like enjoying his downfall right now, right? Because he was a crappy person for a long time. He treated his mom really, really badly. And for him to be going above and beyond with Blanca's son.
Right.
And then for her to come and just kind of take the kid away. We can't be together no more. Like, that's just, yeah. And again, and I say this knowing what's coming. I'm just, guys, AJ, it's, that's tough.
Carmela and her father Hugh sell their spec house to her cousin Brian Camerata. Carmela worries about the substandard building materials Hugh used, but he says he used the same material before. When she tells Tony that she had cleared $600,000 on the sale, he informs her about a sure thing gambling tip and encourages her to bet some of his half on a football game. When Carmela refuses, Tony initially accepts. However, when Tony's peg team wins the game, he becomes furious that Carmela kept him from winning big. They get into a heated argument in which Tony brings up Carmela's previous theft of his money and reminds her that he made the building inspector ignore the construction shortcomings. Carmela storms off when Tony implicitly threatens that the house's roof will collapse and kill Brian's unborn child.
Tony knows what to say to hurt her feelings, man. He knows how to push her button.
There is a meme or a little short video, I guess, going around now of a woman sitting down on the bed, like watching TV. And you hear like it's an AI voice that says there is more blood actually found in semen than there is in blood. So if vampires were really actual, they would suck dicks instead. And then you hear Peter Griffin's voice that says, "Jesus Christ, I just sat down. Is that how you start a conversation?" I thought of that when this has happened. Like, Tony, really?
said he went in, and so you had to know something like this might happen whenever she made the sale. I mean, he's like, just let me use my half, and she's just like, oh, your half, because she thought it was hers.
Right.
She thought that this was all part of a gift for letting him back in the house. You know, she's seeing all her friends have their own. She sees, and I know her name, you know, but I'm gonna say the ex-wife of Big Pussy. Just wanted to say it. But you know, she's Miss Bumpin' Cheryl out there handling business. And she's putting money out on the street. She's flipping it up. So like, yeah, like she's got that FOMO.
In a session with Dr. Melfi, she confronts Tony about his habit of selectively attending their meetings, telling him to either participate in therapy diligently or quit. Tony assures her he will attend the sessions. On the subject of his gambling fever, Melfi questions Tony if what he is chasing is really the money or the high from winning. Tony admits there would be no attraction to gamble if the practice did not carry the inherent danger of losing. Tony and Carmela reconcile, and she expresses fear that their family is constantly vulnerable to various threats. Tony says that despite his gambling losses, he survived getting shot, and therefore, in the bigger picture, is up in life. After Hesh's girlfriend suddenly dies of an apparent stroke, Tony finally brings the full sum of owed money to a distraught Hesh and expresses his condolences. Hesh thanks him weakly, and Tony silently leaves, signifying the end of their friendship.
Yeah, because if I'm Hesh, and that's the thing too, like Hesh throwing back at Tony about the late night phone call. You know that Tony doesn't like to have a mirror flashed on him to show like what he's doing. So when you do that, he's going to react defensively because he's a big child. We talked about that. He's not necessarily mature. So it stinks to think that because Hesh was good for Tony. I feel like Hesh was. If you look at through the course of the series, Hesh has been good for Tony. He's offered him some keen advice and some what's the word? Just some class, man. Just opening them up to some things.
Right. And so we then go to Walk Like a Man.
So fancy.
It's the 5th episode of part 2 and the 17th overall episode of season 6. It's the 82nd overall episode of the series, written and directed by Terrence Winter. It originally aired on May the 6th, 2007. AJ struggles with depression over his breakup with Blanca. He quits his job at the pizzeria, sulks around the house, and disturbs Meadow with suicidal comments. Tony and Carmela disagree about how to help AJ. They each try to have encouraging and consoling talks with him, but to no avail. In a psychotherapy session with Dr. Melfi, Tony tells her that he has been once again seriously contemplating quitting therapy for good, but the situation with AJ's behavior has stopped his plans. Tony gets teary as he tells Melfi he blames himself for what he believes is a hereditary condition of depression in his family he passed over to his son.
Seeing AJ quit his job, because as you know from The Office, we like a good quit story. But that wasn't a good quit story.
No.
He cried and he just walked out. You lock up. But you're the manager, man. You're the manager. Like, you lock up. That's it.
He's not Michael Scott. He knows he had that one good story and he's milking it for all these stories. For lack of better options, Tony and Carmela assign AJ to a therapist who prescribes an antidepressant. After Tony notices Carlo and Patsy proudly talking about their sons. He tells the young men to invite AJ to hang out with them. On his father's orders, AJ goes to a party at the Bada Bing with the two Jasons, Jason Gervaisi and Jason Parisi. As he accompanies them from one party to another, he begins to associate with the profitable sports betting business they are running at school. At one frat party, they use AJ's SUV to take a gambler into the woods and torture him by pouring sulfuric acid on his toes while AJ helps hold him down. Carmela and Tony are content to find that AJ is becoming more outgoing and spends less time at home.
I mean, look, because they really don't care.
Right.
As long as he's not at home, he's okay.
Christopher and Paulie sell stolen power tools through Chris's father-in-law's hardware store. However, Paulie takes offense when Chris refuses to toast to the successful venture with alcohol and berates him for his weakness handling addictive substances. Dude's an addict, man.
Right. But they don't, and that's the thing. It's like, if you remember when they had that janky intervention, they beat the shit out of Christopher, right? Like, how many times have you seen an intervention where the person that is being intervened upon gets beat down? They stopped that man.
I had forgotten about that. The dude that planned the intervention, he was out of his element. I had forgotten about that. Let's talk about you.
Because Chris went in. Chris got he said something for everybody. And then when he got to his mom, you go talk to your mom like that. And that's when they beat the fire out of him. But now they're going to give him a hard time because he didn't want to toast. That's crazy.
When FBI agents Harris and Goddard visit Satriales, Tony decides to provide them info on Ahmed Muhammad after being told that aiding the Bureau in fighting terrorism can earn him a reduced sentence at trial. At a barbecue, Tony tells Chris how his absence from Soprano family gatherings could be seen as a lack of commitment. Chris reminds him that he is avoiding such meetings to keep his sobriety. Tony claims Chris has to show some balls and return to family gatherings. Chris responds by claiming that his addiction is an illness passed down from his parents. Tony disagrees, calling the illness belief bullshit, but Chris insists that his father was a junkie and a drunk, leaving Tony puzzled with this new knowledge.
Well, because he's clearly having similar thoughts with regards to his depression being passed down to AJ. So it all makes sense, but how you going to call BS on Chris for an addiction being passed down when you legitimately have concerns that your son has your depression and anxiety?
That you had just discussed with your therapist.
Just discussed. Like, just discussed.
Question for you. You're going through Jersey and you stop, or you're forced to stop at Satriales, and you go inside and they tell you anything you want is yours. Like, what do you pick out?
A bottle of water from the front.
I just had some Burger King and it's just sitting right here.
It's just sitting right here.
In fact, I'll take 2 waters. Thank you so much for your hospitality.
That's it. Like, let me see what kind of fancy soda pops y'all got up here. You know, like,
is that an Italian soda?
Right. Like, because I know in Jersey they say water instead of water. So let me get 2 of those bottled waters and some soda pop. Because I'm not getting the gabagool. I'm not getting the gabagool. I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting any meat. You don't go to Satriales for the meat, man.
You were in there at the same time. Finn said, they said I could get any sandwich that I want. You ate. Yeah, what? You're not hungry. You ate. You ate already. But that looks really. I see.
You said you ate already.
You're not hungry.
Oh, that's it.
Little Paulie and Jason Molinaro break into the hardware store and steal some items, which they sell to Paulie's Cuban contact from Miami. Chris confronts Paulie and demands compensation, but Paulie throws him out of his house. Tony brushes off Chris's protest. Chris finds himself increasingly sidelined in the family, with Bobby apparently taking his position in Tony's inner circle. After venting his frustration at an AA meeting, he tells another AA member that there was a woman he had to sacrifice for Tony, saying that exact moment was when his and Tony's relationship became permanently poisoned. When little Paulie continues to steal from the hardware store, Chris finds him at a poker game and throws him out of a window. Little Paulie survives the incident with six broken vertebrae. Tony harshly reprimands Chris while Paulie vandalizes his front garden with his Cadillac CTS. Chris's wife, Kelly, is shaken by the ordeal. Tony mediates peace between Chris and Paulie, and the money situation is worked out between them. The two reconcile their differences at the Bing, where Chris takes alcohol to mark the occasion. Chris becomes drunk and rambles about his daughter, causing an amused Paulie to make some off-color jokes about her. Chris believes the group is mocking him and abruptly leaves. Looking for someone to pour his heart out to, he decides to visit JT. However, JT is unenthusiastic about listening to Chris and is offended when he mentions that he let him write Cleaver. He attempts to tell JT about Adriana and Ralphie, but JT requests that he be kept in the dark because Chris is in the mafia.
Right. Chris, you're in the mafia.
With this remark, Chris shoots and kills JT before leaving. Tony and AJ both return home late to find Carmela and Meadow having a late night snack. Meanwhile, Chris arrives at his residence, walks through his ravaged front yard, and staggers into the house.
He did he fixed a bushel as he was going inside, as if it made any real difference, But what they would end up having to do is just go get Sal Vitro to fix that yard again, man. I mean, that's pretty much the only option you got. But the episode, and looking at these 4 episodes that we just talked about, stage 5, alluding to Johnny Sack. Remember When sounds a lot like Remember Me, which is what Gambit says in X-Men. But Remember When has that title because Paulie starts almost every story in that episode with Remember When, which pisses Tony off. And in this one, Walk Like a Man, you're like, okay, not only do you have AJ being challenged with, manning up after the breakup, Christopher's being challenged to drink, and now little Paulie, he's being challenged to actually get up because his back is messed up. Oh, that was bad. That was a fall straight on his spine, man. That was tough.
They're going to call my man to fix the yard. He's got to give Paulie money for the yard that Paulie messed up.
Yep. You give me 25% of everything you make. Oh, gosh.
In his mind, he keeps hearing, no, it was the other way around over and over again. Son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Oh, we get into that powder keg, man. I mean, we got Bobby getting let in a little bit closer, which is something we're talking about at the first episode of part 2 of season 6. Right. Bobby getting more involvement. He did the hit in Canada. He's got the deal going with the prescription drugs coming from Canada. So he's getting in closer into the family, which 1,000% makes sense. Christopher is going to feel some kind of way about it. Chris feels that way about anybody who has any type of a familial connection to Tony, because he knows how important family is to Tony. So when you've got a Tony B, he knows Paulie, like Christopher knows Paulie is only going to get so close because he's not actually family.
Right.
And Tony even says, he's like, they're family, but I need somebody who's really family, right? Like, so when Christopher sees somebody who's really family getting close, he immediately gets defensive because he feels like they're usurping his position. But he doesn't take into consideration his own actions into that.
You've got Phil with no more Mr. Nice Guy. You're right, Bobby coming in closer to the inner circle at the same time, even though they're like not really, but yes, usurping Chris's position. Paulie, it all depends on what side of the bed he gets up on that day.
Yep.
Seal is the steady, but Seal is not great health wise.
Right.
And it's all going to come to a head in these last 3 episodes.
We got to remember. I think we don't. I think we don't think about it because Van Zant looks fairly good for his age, man. But it's just like Seal is older than Tony,
right?
You know, so I mean, you had to expect at some point in time. I think they do a great job with his makeup and his wardrobe to where Seal doesn't look like he's aged over these 6 years at all. Tony's gotten bigger, you know, so you can see a progression with Tony. Everybody saw Paulie, the wings have gotten fuller. You see everybody's aging except for Seal, man. It's just his health is progressing. So yeah, they had to do something to remind you this dude is getting old.
Meanwhile, somewhere in Seattle, Finn is saying that he's never been to New Jersey.
Well, what you got to recognize is Finn is now real close with Janice's oldest boy,
Harpo.
They're thick as thieves. Neither one of them. Here's the thing: that Harpo doesn't talk about his mom and his family. Finn doesn't talk about his relationship in Jersey. Those cats know so much about each other, but they never talk about it. So in 20 years, they will have an amazing conversation. Finn is like, man, I could go for a sandwich from Satriel's right now. And Harpo's like,
what
you know Satriel's?
15 years from now, he goes, man, I tell you what, I remember. Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. 5 more years.
I gotta watch here. That's ticking down the time. I'll let you know. I'll call you.
It's a countdown like you're on a diet or something like that. Oh, that's it. Nice. We're getting there, bro.
We are getting there. Next episode should be the end. Then we will let everyone know where we're going from there. But always a good time with you, my brother. Go ahead and plug any and everything you've got, my friend.
No, man. Just exciting times, bro. What do we got going on? More what we're watching. This is going to be a great summer for what we're watching because y'all want to watch what we're watching. And so
summer.
I mean, it's big time summer. So that's pretty much all I'm plugging right now, man. Just more of that. And then I encourage all of you to flood the comments to strong arm Joey to have me in some of his other endeavors, right? Like that's the only way you're going to get me there is if you strong arm them. If the crowd says they want it and there's sponsorship dollars behind it, you can't stiff arm me no more, baby. So y'all subscribe and comment that you want more TJ on the Joey Harris show. Bro, I don't even know nothing about wrestling, but y'all tell them y'all want me there too.
TJ's like, I will slam my way into your hearts.
That's exactly. I am going to Russian sickle my way into your heart.
Russian sickle, he's going back.
I'm taking it back for you, baby. Yeah, man, I got you.
Little TJ in the late 80s.
Bro, I'm telling you, that's where my wrestling knowledge was.
Eating popcorn for some reason.
You can't go wrong. You draw TJ eating some popcorn. That's pretty accurate.
But you gotta clean those machines. But
You do.
that's a different conversation for a different time. But you do have to clean those machines.
If you have an old school popcorn maker at the house, clean it. Otherwise, you're going to be throwing it away after a year and wondering why you invested in it in the first place. Keep that thing clean.
All right. Joey Harris comedy at gmail.com, at the Joey Harris on social media. TJ, as always, thank you, my brother. We will see you all next time.